Thank you, Eloy. You forgot to tell him I was president of my 8th grade class. Twice. I love being part of these opening sessions to begin a new school year. There's nothing more wonderful than the first day of class, except perhaps the last day of class. And in spite of the rumors that Lou Anne Bynum is spreading, that is not my age. Every person in this auditorium shares a common value. We are all deeply committed to helping our students improve and expand their learning. Every faculty member, administrator, librarian, counselor, secretary, technician, groundskeeper, and trustee here today strongly supports our goals of student success, as April noted in her opening remarks, and which was confirmed by President Oakley, Greg Peterson, and Shauna Hageman. And I want to join you today in that support of student success by sharing a perspective with you on pathways to student success and completion. And I would like to frame our discussion around 3 key questions. What is the completion agenda, and why is it important? How does the student success pathway help us frame the completion agenda? And what really works to help students succeed? Let's look at question 1. What is the completion agenda, and why is it important? Here succinctly is a mission statement. The mission of the completion agenda is to double the number of students who by the year 2020 earn a 1-year certificate, an associate's degree, or who transfer to the university. That has become the ubiquitous mission of the completion agenda across the country. And completion has become the overarching mission of the 1,200 community colleges in this country. The completion agenda is the same thing as the student success agenda, but with a more targeted goal. It has become the overarching mission because of the number of national leaders that have begun to support this mission. President Obama said a number of years ago that we need to have 5 million more community college graduates by 2020, and he sort of set the framework for this. He's been joined by many national foundations. The Lumina Foundation has what it's called a big goal, which is to have 60% increase by 2025. And your president today is on a panel here in Long Beach with the president, Jamie Marasotis, on this issue. And hopefully we'll have a proposal in his pocket when he meets with Jeremy. The Gates Foundation has a major goal to double the number of graduates. 6 national community college organizations, including the organization that your current chair of your board chairs nationally, the Association of Community College Trustees, AACC, the League for Innovation, and so forth. They signed a document that said we are signing on to a goal of 50% more graduates by 2020. Here's an example from the state of Virginia, and here's an example of one community college, Anne Arundel in Maryland. What you can see here, I've tried to demonstrate, is that this is a goal supported by the president, supported by foundations, supported by states. There are now 39 states that support this general goal, and individual community colleges. Never in the history of the community college movement has an idea so galvanized the stakeholders from the White House to the State House, and now signed on by hundreds and hundreds of community colleges. Why is this important? It's important to us because our failures as an educational system have contributed to what is looming as a national disaster. We used to be first in the world in the number of graduates. Now we're 10th. We used to be first in the world in terms of the ranked our system as first in the world. Now we are ranked 26th in the world in the value of our educational system. Why is this important? It's important because the American dream for our students, our children, and our grandchildren is becoming a nightmare. For the first time in our history, the current generation of college-age Americans will be less educated than their parents' generation. Every one of us in this room wanted it better for our children. That's beginning to unravel. Because the truth is, if your daddy was rich, you're going to stay rich, and if your daddy was poor, you're going to stay poor. I thought I would never hear a candidate for president, Rick Santorum, call our president a snob because of his support for education. That does reflect the temper of this country at this point. Why is the completion agenda important? It's important because now that we are in the public eye, we cannot continue to perform as we have in the past. These are national data. 14% of community college students do not complete a single credit in their first term. Not a single credit. Almost 50% drop out by the second year. Almost 60% need remediation nationally, and it's worse in many states and colleges. In California, 72% of our students are placed into remedial English, and 83% of our students are placed in remedial math. Your placement into remedial education is quite high at Long Beach Community College, and you heard Greg and Shauna describe a pilot in which you will examine a new way to place students in developmental studies courses based upon the research that comes out of the Community College Research Center. We know that AccuPlacer and Compass are not designed to place students in remedial courses. High school grade point average is a better predictor, and you have gotten a great deal of national press because of your leadership in that area. This agenda is important because we have been joined by some of the most, we have been joined by the leading foundations in this country. Let me finish these up, I'm jumping, I'm sorry. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has identified the community college as the most important segment of post-secondary education, and they have allocated $500 million to this effort. The Lumina Foundation has already spent $100 million on achieving the dream. Again, never in the history of the community college movement have we had so many funds from so many foundations to help us with this effort. And Long Beach Community College has agreed to play a major national role in the completion agenda. Here are several examples of the kinds of student success activities and completion activities in which you're engaged. Your trustee goals indicate that you support student success by implementing the Educational Master Plan, by implementing the Promise Pathways program, and expanding the Long Beach College Promise. And here's your statement of values. It's a student focus. Students are the focus and purpose for all we do. And you heard April and others talk about that this morning. You have embarked on a major new innovative initiative, the Long Beach City College Promise. And Greg and Shauna outlined that for you. I'll not do that here for the sake of time, but it's an indication that you are deeply dedicated and engaged in this completion agenda that is the overarching mission of the community colleges in this country. Here's the completion agenda in a nutshell. The idea is to create model pathways to success and completion that lead to degrees and credentials in which people can earn a family-sustaining wage. The pathway has milestones and momentum, and its practices are based on evidence, and the target for the completion agenda are the low-income, underprepared, first-generation students who constitute the majority of our students. I wanted to focus on the student success pathway as the major presentation today, but because of the time and so that we can keep on schedule, I'm going to cut this part of the presentation considerably, but I recommend to you that the student success pathway is an extraordinarily good model for thinking about our work and provides a roadmap for that work. And I'll just quickly go through several models. Here's the model of the student success pathway from the Gates Foundation. Here's that same model broken down into more components. And here's yet a third model that I created with my colleagues at the League for Innovation because we wanted a model that was more student-centric. I guess that's what we accomplished with the FEAT. The idea here is that there are many components that a student takes in his or her journey through the institution. If you have a clear image or a roadmap of what that is, you can then examine what it is you're doing to lead toward student success. So without going through the details of that student success pathway, I recommend it to you for two reasons. The student success pathway really becomes a model or template or roadmap for the entire institution as you begin to think about what it is you're doing as an institution to help move your students towards success. It also is a model for individual student planning. So it seems that what colleges do is what students do, and what students do is what colleges do. And if you could take the student success pathway model and converge that around those two key goals for a student success pathway, it just becomes an extraordinary tool to help you manage what you're doing there. But we won't, in terms of time, not really talk about the details of the student success pathway. I recommend it to you. There's a great deal of literature on it out there, and I hope you will examine some of that. Let's go to the third question: what really works to help students succeed? Our tendency historically, and frankly as this completion agenda begins to unfurl in the early years, even to the present day, the tendency for colleges has been to look for the magic practices. What are the high-impact or promising practices that we could implement at our college to really achieve the goals of the completion agenda? And there's a lot of these magic practices out there. Here's a short list. All of these practices are being explored by colleges dedicated to this agenda. There are about 25 of these identified in the literature, and some colleges believe that if you just get the right practice, we can make this a success agenda work. But I would like to make a key point. While it's helpful to experiment with these individual practices, such practices by themselves are not particularly effective in achieving the goals of the completion agenda. Here's a comment by the researcher Davis Jenkins at the Community College Research Center, who says discrete practices really are not effective in bringing about the kind of change we need. Even if an individual faculty member succeeds in tweaking a classroom practice or implementing an innovative practice, unfortunately, it makes little or no difference in the overall impact of the college on student success. Piecemeal reform, boutique programs, and the application of an innovation by an individual faculty member are impotent to bring about significant change in institutions. The instructor, as lone cowboy, cannot move the herd roughly west without help. So instead of focusing primarily on practices, we need to create basic principles for student success to be launched college-wide by a critical mass of core faculty, college-wide by a critical mass of college faculty, if we really want something significant to happen such as doubling the number of students who complete these programs. There's something in our DNA as educators that likes principles. We like to take our practices and cobble them together into principles. And there are dozens of these lists around the country. You're probably familiar with the 7 principles of good practice in undergraduate education. Kay McClenny and her folks at CESI created a set of principles recently. Davis Jenkins from the Community College Research Center has such a set of principles, and some of you may be familiar with my own 6 principles of the Learning College. Well, from these 4 basic sets of principles, I've tried to cobble together, for the purposes of discussion, 6 core principles of the completion agenda. And I would like to offer those to you for your consideration. There are other principles. These aren't the final set of principles cast in concrete. They're only to suggest a different way of thinking about the student success agenda. Rather than focusing on individual practices, it may be better for us to focus, as Davis Jenkins has strongly recommended, on a set of core principles. I want to offer 6 to you for your consideration. Core principle number 1, every student will make a significant connection with another person at the college as soon as possible. I think you can begin to see that as different than instituting learning communities or instituting project-based education or starting early college high schools. The Community College Survey of Student Engagement has now surveyed over 500,000 students across the country. And when community college students were asked, what is the most important factor related to staying in college, every year they answered the same: a faculty member, counselor, advisor, or other student knows my name. That's poignant. That the major factor for staying in college is that someone at the college knows a student's name. When the security guard in the parking lot welcomes a student and helps her graciously find the right place to park, a connection occurs. When the secretary in the admissions office smiles and says, "We're glad you're here. How can I help?" a subtle connection occurs. When a faculty member stands at the door and welcomes each student as they come into the class, a beginning connection occurs. Core principle number 2, key intake programs, including orientation, assessment, advisement, and placement, will be integrated and mandatory. Here are the 2 key words: integrated and mandatory. Integrated, all in one place, because nothing's more frustrating for students than to come for assessment and then to be told they have to go across the street for counseling and academic advising, and they have to go yet to another building for financial aid. Many of the students drop out in that first week or first day of college when they try to navigate these intake processes, and it needs to be mandatory. If it's of value, it needs to be mandatory. When we know how important these key intake processes are, why are we so reluctant to make them mandatory? Remember Kay McClenny's warning when she was here last year: students do not do optional. The third principle, every student will be placed in a program of study from day 1. Undecided students will be placed in a mandatory program of study designed to help them decide. The definition of a program of study is a coherent set of courses with a prescribed pathway to completion. Nursing has the model, allied health, business, criminal justice, the STEM programs, even liberal arts. These are prescribed programs of study. In a study of 430,000 students, those who entered a program of study in their first year were twice as likely to complete as those who signed up for a program of study in their second year. If students are in a framed experience of what they need to do to get to the goal of completion, they will perform much better and they'll stick around. First-generation underprepared students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds are especially vulnerable to dropping out when they are allowed to make random selections of disconnected courses and just wander around in the curriculum. The student success pathway is not something that the students have to hack their way through like a jungle to find out where they need to go. We know what the programs of study we are. We need to limit some of those choices. This has been shown over and over by the research coming out of the Community College Research Center, particularly the research of Judith Scott Clayton, and we give students too many choices. We need to take seriously their plea, tell me what to take. If you know what I need, why don't you make me do it? Now, I know what that does. I know those of you who are still grounded in the 60s and the right to fail have trouble with that. But that's a conversation. That's a conversation you need to have in your departments and division, because if we're going to make decisions based on evidence and the research, we now know that too many choices for our kinds of students only confuses them. Now, we also know that we want students who are undecided and unsure or who want to explore the curriculum, we want to give them that opportunity. But for students who are undecided, unsure, there is also a program of study. It's a program of study designed to help them make a decision. And that program of study can be easily constructed around a learning community of a student success course, perhaps a career exploration course, perhaps a college-ready communication course, perhaps a psychology course. 2 or 3 courses that will provide a grounding for the student, but will help move that student toward a decision about a program of study. Core principle number 4. Every student will be carefully monitored throughout the first term to ensure successful progress, and the college will make interventions immediately to keep students on track. Early alert and active intervention systems can increase retention for first-time students by as much as 20%. Early means early. The midterm grade is way too late for first-term, first-generation, underprepared college students who come to our doors. And we can do that. We can do the early alert systems now. They're beginning to crop up in community colleges all across the country. We can do it because we have data analytics. You know what data analytics is. Every time you go onto Amazon.com and you say, this is a book I want to order, your name comes up and it says, everyone who ordered 50 Shades of Grey also ordered these books, and you might be interested in these. They're using data mining systems to begin to identify your likes, your proclivities. I think that's the right word for Shades of Grey, a proclivity, exactly. So we can use data analytics to help our students, and there's some extraordinary programs beginning to be implemented around the country in that arena. Core principle number 5. All decisions regarding policies, programs, practices, processes, and personnel will be based on evidence to the extent it is possible to do so. To the extent that it is possible to do so. We have a growing research base in community colleges. When I started as a 25-year-old dean of students 50 years ago, we had absolutely no research whatsoever on community colleges. In the first 10 or 15 years, the only research we had was whether or not our students were successful in transfer, and all that research was done by Dorothy Knoll and Lee Metzger at the University of California at Berkeley. We had no research on what works in the classroom as we do today. The Community College Research Center has now produced over 300 research reports. You're beginning to use those all of us need to begin to use those around the country. Sixth core principle, professional development for all college stakeholders will focus on student success and completion as the highest priority. That is one of the major recommendations of every national report. Your president, Eloy Oakley, sat on the Commission for the Future of Community Colleges that just recently released a report, and one of its major recommendations is to increase and expand the staff development programs because, frankly, they're pretty lousy around the country. I often speak in the morning to colleges like this. I did 2 in Texas this week, and 1 in Ohio, and 1 in Ohio, Illinois right next. Illinois last week. I'll do 1 in New York next week, and 1 in North Carolina the following week. I speak in the morning, and then in the afternoon sometimes there are workshops that you would think would complement the theme of the day. But I sometimes find staff development people offering workshops, and here are 3 that were offered in several colleges, 1 in California. Yoga to reduce stress, important but hardly related to student success. Alternatives to your 401k, important but could perhaps be offered in a different format. And the one that gets me the most, your astrological sign. These are real workshops that are offered by our colleagues in some community colleges around the country. We must take professional development seriously. You are doing that here in a great, wonderful climate of fun and enjoyment as you celebrate your 85th year, and there are meetings following this that will continue to focus on some of these issues. Well, these are 6 core principles. There are others, and you may not engage these as your priority. I just wanted to suggest to you the kind of flavor of moving away from thinking about practices to thinking about principles as the way you really implement the student success agenda. I want to come back to the pathway, even though we did not have time to elucidate the idea of the pathway. I want to recommend it to you for these 2 reasons. The Student Success Pathway provides a visible and integrated roadmap for the core business of the community college and should be used as the institutional framework for creating strategic and long-range plans. And secondly, the Student Success Pathway also provides a visible and integrated roadmap for students and should be used as the framework for their individual educational plans. In other words, what colleges do is what students do, and what students do is what colleges do, or at least it should work that way. Now, here's the real challenge for all of this. It's not that we're ignorant and don't know what to do. The question is whether we want to do it badly enough. And I think Long Beach City College deserves high marks as one of the nation's emerging flagship colleges, especially for your collective will against overwhelming odds in the nation and in this state. The community college has made a major investment in the completion agenda, as you have at Long Beach City College. It's the overarching mission of the community college, supported by foundations and stakeholders from the White House to the State House, like no other mission in our 110-year history. It is simply our Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame on the national stage. And the stakes for us are extraordinarily high. If we do not succeed in this effort, the community college we know today may cease to exist, and the community college we dream of for the future may never come to be. I wish you all the best in your continuing journey with the Student Success and Completion Agenda. Thanks very much.